Welcome back to the news, everyone. I've got a bunch of awesome stories for you today. A few of them are quite funny, but I'm going to start off with the slightly more grim one that is at least a bit amusing, because Call of Duty, being the absolute pillar of Activision publishing, is going a little bit deeper with its microtransactions. Now to the point of continuing to sell player power. It may have slipped under the radar that now there is just a little smidge of pay to win in Call of Duty, but that is what's going on. So, Modern Warfare 2 is doubling down on some gameplay-changing features with the latest microtransaction purchases that are for their Tarkov-inspired mode, right? So it's that more extraction shooter-inspired thing. More recently, like a lot of the streamers have been getting into it, that obviously means there is quite a lot of interest from viewers. Now, we already had the initial classic Ghost microtransaction bundle that gave access to armor from launch in the DMZ mode, which is the Tarkov-like one. So, you just start with armor. Other people don't. Plebeians, they don't start with armor because they didn't pay. Okay, but it actually is continuing. As picked up by Eurogamer, the new Rose and the Thorn bundle adds a cosmetic skin, additional operator slots, and 2 weapon blueprints with special cooldowns for the DMZ. Most importantly, gives the player, using the operator, a free UAV. Now, in a mode like DMZ, UAV is really useful. And this just means that you have a free way to identify other players nearby, all for the low price of 1,800 Call of Duty points. But of course, can you buy 1,800 Call of Duty points? No, you have to buy 2,400 Call of Duty points for $19.99. Of course, giving you some left over. Now, they've paid lip service to mitigating this by making there be a 60-second delay before you can actually use this after the round starts. But the reality here is, right, and a lot of the times for us, it's about principle, and it doesn't have to be the most egregious pay to win, but it's just in a DMZ or in a Tarkov-like mode, the idea of this pay to win, like a paid advantage, it's just even doing it even a slight bit, you've crossed the line, right? Because it makes the game unpure. And that's what they've done. They've made it so that the team who has got paying players, be it the armor thing, be it the free UAV thing, they have an advantage against other people in this PvPvE mode, right? Here's some commentary. This is one of the worst. Three-man team, all pay for this. Wait 60 seconds, guaranteed team wipe on any squad in the area. They are going to just ruin this mode. Just make it so you pay an amount of COD points to instantly get your insured guns back, not this trash. Yeah. What can we say? You look at the recurring revenue, you look at how big Call of Duty is, it's the absolute pillar of what they're doing. They're always going to find ways, be it something like this, or even something like the one that I always bring up, which is the way that the gun bundles that have a cosmetic skin, they often come with a pre-loadout of attachments, and those attachments could be ones that are quite hard or grindy to unlock. The most, at least the one that I remember, is the Akimbo Diamatis, when they were extremely overpowered near the start of Black Ops Cold War, where clearly they just wanted you to buy the waifu Diamatis bundle that came with the thing that just happens to be very overpowered, right? So what is it? It's scumbag behavior. That sucks. So thanks, Bobby. But with that, we have a nice little panda story for you, because there's 4 new games have made it in to the Video Game Hall of Fame. In reverse chronological order, we've got The Last of Us, which goes in because of, the motion capture tech, skilled voice acting, layered storytelling, so yeah, that gets in. Wii Sports gets in. I think that is obvious. It's absurd how big that was. We then got Barbie Fashion Designer, and you might think, why the hell's that in the Video Game Hall of Fame? Well, it came out in 1996, and it was the 9th best-selling game of that year, outselling both Doom and Quake. So yeah, there you go. And now, of course, what we're going to do, we're going to be watching Oppenheimer and going down with a chaser of Barbie, because they're both coming out in the cinemas in the same day. And then Computer Space. Now, this is a very interesting one to get into the Hall of Fame. Not only the first arcade game, but also the first commercially available video game. Yeah, Computer Space brought games from basically the academic spaces in Space War to wider audiences in 1971, and it actually turned out that the success of Computer Space meant that in 1972, those guys founded Atari and released Pong. So isn't that pretty wild? But okay, let's go into Sony shutting down some studios, which is definitely more sad news. And it definitely shows that Sony is doubling down on those big budget cinematic games, the ones that get them the cultural mindshare and just sort of keep it away from Microsoft, right? Basically, they apparently seem to have conducted a strategic review of their various projects and studios, and because of that, we do have some cancellations and some dead studios. So, Pixel Opus, right? They didn't make God of War, they didn't make The Last of Us, they made small-scale titles that were still award-winning, like Concrete Genie, which was a jet-set radio-inspired action-adventure game. You can see there, like, not the most glowing, but very good still, a 77 average with 69% of critics recommending. I think just about anyone would be happy with that. Until now, they were basically working on a project in collaboration with Sony Pictures Entertainment for PS5. The status of that is currently unknown. But then also, it seems that this review has meant that even some projects that are a bit more in line with their intended live service plan, that they're not safe. And if you're not up to date with this, Sony has a decently ambitious plan to get more into live services. I think they know that while they are clobbering Xbox and some things, that at the end of the day, having games like Destiny, obviously they own Bungie now, Sea of Thieves, right? Like all of those games that just kind of roll on, keep on going well, just drum up plenty of users on the platform. Like they definitely want that. And I think especially in a world where at one point, who knows how it will go, but Microsoft could nab Call of Duty and a decade say, no, Sony, you can't have it anymore. They're going to want to have answers. This even includes Deviation Games, a studio full of a lot of ex-Treyarch people seemingly working on some sort of free-to-play live service game, which I assume is a shooter. But some of these leaks, though, are that a shooter project at Final Strike Games has been cancelled more than halfway through its expected development period. This is a game that was in development for 3 years. It was 2 years away from shipping for PS5 and PC. Seemingly a shooter. I think we can assume some sort of live service shooter. And basically 40% headcount reduction in that studio. Now, First Strike they've done plenty, you just wouldn't really know because they were doing support on Fortnite. They had Rocket Arena, which was their own game. So while they haven't been cancelled, but like they have had their headcount reduced, I have to wonder if that's just them going back to being a support studio for like other Sony things. Perhaps. But overall, though, what we see is Sony reviewing stuff, right, and being willing to make some of those hard calls, and they definitely seem to have very specific demands for what a Sony game is, right? And it kind of has to be that really, really big blockbuster. Or if it's an indie, it has to be something like Stray, where of course that gets its PS Plus almost immediately. Like that is what Sony is. And it's funny, you look at a game like Returnal, which was a pretty big step up from Housemarque. Fairly sure Housemarque is quite significantly expanded and will likely be working on larger projects than Returnal going forward, which more further solidifies them as a true, a Sony studio that makes that kind of game. So it's all quite interesting. At the end of the day, while not everything may be smooth sailing, Sony do end up actually getting the games out there. Now, to move on, this is potentially sad news. April the 1st, 2024 is April Fool's Day, but it also apparently is the first or the earliest date that the new Nintendo handheld could actually come out, right? Because it's not going to be launching until the next fiscal year. So what they basically said is, and this is in their quarterly results, they don't expect to release any new hardware during this financial cycle, which means the Switch will have at least an 8-year life cycle. So it's going to truck on a little bit longer. Nintendo are going to basically take the hits, and they are forecasting a continued decrease in net sales and profits as they only sell 15 million Switches in the current fiscal year. Yeah, the Switch is obviously slowed down a bit. It's getting long in the tooth. I think everybody knows that they absolutely need a stronger piece of hardware out there, and I'm really excited for that. I think the Switch, it was a real trailblazer in sort of reigniting that handheld space. Funny, it really just made me wish that Sony had something, had a modern answer to the PS Vita. I really would have loved that. Obviously, there's the mobile gaming with the Backbone, the Razer Kishi, or whatever it's called. That is showing that, on our phones, be it an xCloud, PS Now, I mean, that's what would be ideal. Or even running some full games like Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, they look gorgeous on a phone. And they absolutely would look gorgeous on a new Nintendo piece of hardware. And imagine, right? You have a decently new chip that can actually run things at a good frame rate, maybe 60 FPS is a bit more of the normal. You perhaps have an OLED screen from launch now that that display tech is really not that much more expensive for those smaller panels. That would be pretty awesome. And obviously for Nintendo, they would be in a position where they immediately get to do, wasn't it Smash? That they just like moved over from the Wii U, or was it Mario Kart? Or maybe it was both. But they would just get to immediately do that for so many games. The game designs that they have are quite marvelous, but if they could look better and run more smoothly, that would be amazing. Think about Tears of the Kingdom. How many people would buy that again, or hopefully there'd be some sort of crossplay, but how many people would like to play that on a way better piece of kit? At the end of the day, we've all seen those, like, is it the Dolphin emulator? You know, when people were able to look at Breath of the Wild, I think it was the Wii U version, but it was running at like 4K 60, looking absolutely gorgeous. And that's really what I want to see. Obviously, the Steam Deck has got so many more PC gamers actually engaged in the handheld format. Again, I was stunned with, our release of our game, The Pill Beyond, how many people were actually playing that on a Steam Deck. And it's like, moving forward, I'm definitely in my head going to be thinking of the Steam Deck. And, I would be very, I'd always be very pro, if it can fit in an iPad, do it. Why not? So, if there's a bit of cross-development that could work there, it would be interesting. And certainly, a lot of developers, I can certainly say this, a lot of developers would be thrilled to have more headroom. There's things that, I think most devs, we can't say because, we're NDA'd on it, but certainly developing for the Switch, it has its ups and its downs. It's fantastic to be in the Switch. We definitely, that's something that a lot of people want, but the Switch can be a challenging platform. And I'm sure some of that's Nintendo. Some of that is also just that, at the end of the day, this is running, was it the NVIDIA, the Tegra X1, right? It was it's a pretty old chip that thing's running now. So, seems like we never got the Switch Pro, and maybe it'll be something new. Or perhaps they will just call it the Switch Pro. Maybe they'll be in a situation where they just think, hang on, the Switch is the winning format. Let's not change that. Let's just do a better Switch. Maybe we call it the Switch Pro. Maybe we call it the new Nintendo Switch. Who knows? I'm just not entirely convinced that they need to do anything like the Nintendo 3DS, where they have to, throw a weird gimmick in. I think that they've got it locked in now. Okay, to move on then. Final story, but it is a really funny one. This is when the gacha game grind is too damn strong. Okay, so we've all had it. We got really sucked into a video game to the point where it's risked our job. Or risked our education. You flunked an exam because you just stayed up all night, played video games. Well, there's a match between S2 Esports and Ghost Commandos that has had to be forfeited in the favor of S2 Esports because, per KZ over here, KZ Soul Guy, well, one of their players was too busy playing Honkai Star Rail to install the VCT client in time for their match. Yeah. Now, that VCT software, that's tournament software. It's not a scene that I'm, that aware of, but I have to imagine that that's just some really hardcore, local anti-cheat to protect the integrity of the game. A little bit like how somebody who maybe works with sensitive data has got to have one of those very securely locked down laptops. I imagine it's some shit like that. But anyway, the notion that they had to forfeit because someone was just playing so much Honkai Star Rail is kind of cracked. Honkai Star Rail. I should probably see what that is, because at the end of the day, MiHoYoverse, as they're called now, they are culturally relevant, and from the few hours of Genshin that I played, just mirroring my iPad onto a big TV, I was pretty bloody impressed with what they put together, and this notion of a game that can really live in so many different platforms and formats. Interesting stuff. Anyway, that is it for today's shot of the gaming news. Some fun stories, and of course, covering the Bobster and the Bobster's lackeys doing what they do. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.